to another episode of Power Pit Podcast. I'm excited to have Jared Hirsch from Legacy Fitness with us here today. Jared has been training for 4 years, and he actually opened Legacy Fitness earlier this year. So Jared, thanks for being on the podcast with us.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Let's jump into it. And, I want to hear a little bit more about you. What's your background? Where did you come from? And how did that all lead into fitness?
For sure. Yeah. Definitely. I grew up in Vancouver. So I was, close to Vancouver, Abbotsford, BC.
I spent some time in Abbotsford,
yeah. And so, for me, I grew up in your basic family, three siblings, and it was nothing crazy ever really happened as a kid, and we didn't do anything nuts. Like, it was just, I would say, a normal childhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, but I was always a sporty kid. None of my other siblings were into that kind of stuff. And so, not to the degree that I was.
Yeah.
And so I kind of picked up even on that as a kid, just that I knew that this was like my biggest passion. And so that's something that my parents kind of just threw me into. They're like, this is
nice, man.
This is where you're most comfortable, right?
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
I grew up there all the way till I left for Saskatchewan in 2018. So pretty much all my childhood was
Gotcha, man.
was BC.
So you said sporty. What sort of sports were you involved in?
Hockey was the biggest one for me.
Yeah.
I gravitated to everything, but I was more. I knew hockey was the thing, and I was never anything special. I had to work for every spot I ever got. Like I didn't have that natural talent, right?
Gotcha.
And so so I was but I was passionate about it, and I knew exactly like that this is where I wanted to go. And I think it would have been around grade 10 was when I really started to be like, you know what, I think I want to be in college. I want to play college hockey if I can.
Yeah.
I don't care where, I don't care what level, because like I said, like I was never the star of any sport I ever played, and so it just kind of I knew I was going to have to work for it.
Yeah.
So I kind of started pursuing that path to play college hockey. So that was, I was really fortunate as an athlete to have coaches and kids that I played with that were always kind of valued the character of the person more than the sport itself.
Yep.
So I learned that really, really early on.
Nice. I think that's something that's important that comes from sports.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways that instills that character of a person. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it taught me the lesson that like your sport is it's just something you do right now. Maybe it's something you do for an extra 3 or 4 years later on in life. But at the end of the day, like what you learn from your time as a kid in sport it's all about becoming an adult that's, effective in society and nice to people, and like just those basic skills that you don't necessarily get to the same degree.
Yeah, like working with other people and that. There's just something to be said about team sports where you have to rely on each other. Yeah. And I think that is something that is awesome that can be extrapolated from that in life lessons.
Yeah.
Is like, how does that build into everyday life and regular life once you're done with that specific sport at that specific time?
Yeah. And it's I think I saw that before I saw any value in any other aspect of sport.
Yeah.
It's like, I grew up the big kid. I was the chubby kid that
you can relate to that.
Yeah, that was told, well, you'll grow out of it. You're just chubby now. Like, oh, I didn't ever grow out of it. Right. And so for me, sport was, especially hockey, because I couldn't run, couldn't do a push-up, couldn't do a pull-up, couldn't do nothing. Like I had no strength, but when I put the skates on, it's like you can just kind of glide, right? Mm-hmm. And so that for me was the outlet to forget about how bad I was at everything else.
Yeah.
And that was so hockey was such a safe space for me, because it didn't really matter that I wasn't super, super skilled in the sport itself, but it was the outlet. Yeah. And that satisfied
absolutely
just the things that I felt were missing. Because it's like, you look at every other kid your age and they're all, doing 20, 30, 40, 50 push-ups, no problem. they run, their knees don't hurt, back doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And so hockey was the thing that kind of, for the longest time, I would say up until about grade 9, kind of gave me okay, like it's okay to be big, like, because which was definitely a challenge. It presented challenges when I got older.
Like, just you talking about that, it makes me, like, I want to talk about this for a little bit here, because I remember growing up and my sport was baseball. I loved baseball. But again, this was probably grade 7, grade 8. I ended up dropping out of baseball because my coach again, I was the bigger kid. I would never say that I was fat, but like I was bigger, I was chubby, I was a farm boy.
Yeah.
So we ate and we worked,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And, but when it came to sports, it was like I was strong, but he wanted me to be faster. He wanted me to be quicker. And so my coach ended up having me run extra laps, do extra sit-ups, do extra push-ups. Right. That at the time as a kid made me feel singled out, made me feel bullied, and not necessarily specifically from the coach, although a little bit from the coach too, but from the other students who would laugh and be like, you have to do an extra lap because you're fat. You have to do extra because you're fat. And it wasn't until years later, talking to that coach as an adult, I understood what he was trying to attempt. And again, we're talking about the 90s, so this is going out of the tough love era, where he was like, I saw potential in you. He's like, to be honest, I thought you were one, and maybe he was blowing smoke up my head. Right. But like at the end of it, he told me, he's like, I saw so much potential in you. He's like, I thought you could be one of the best on the team, but he's like, but you needed to put in a little more work. Right. And he's like, I wanted to push you a little bit harder. Yeah. And so that was my story. And unfortunately, in my story, I dropped out of team sports entirely at that point. Right. And got into MMOs and online video games, which did not help the narrative of being overweight. Right. But anyways, I want to pass it off to you a little bit more and talk a little bit more about how that affected you and feeling like that as a kid. You know, what did you learn from that, and how did you grow from that?
Yeah, I think I always knew that I was the kid that couldn't do what most of the other kids did, and it wasn't until grade 9, between grade 9 and 10, that I really started to dislike that. You know how like you sometimes have to develop a distaste and a dislike so strongly to make change, right? Yeah. It can't, like, I've always been that way. It's like the change has to be because the difficulty is so great. Otherwise I won't. Yeah. It won't change, right? And when I couldn't run, when I couldn't do a push-up, when I couldn't do any of that stuff, I started to question, like, how do you change this? Like, I seemed to eat okay. Like, I didn't really know anything at the time, right? Yeah. And so, but it definitely, around that time was when the anxiety started to just creep in like a it's terrible. Like I didn't know how to get out of the big kid, like just all the feels, everything that you get with that, right? And I was really fortunate because I got to meet a buddy. It was a friend of a friend, who bigger guy as well, but we started in the spring, and he's like, let's just go to the gym. Let's just go to the rec center. Like, we're 15, 16, whatever. Like, we can do that now on our own. And so that was the main, like, was the first person that I ever went to the gym with that really gave me the push. Yeah. Because I just did not want to be fat. All of the things that I wanted in my life at the time, I didn't have, and I thought it was because of how big I was, right? Yeah. Like, my friend circle was next to nothing, and hockey was kind of like, there were friends there, but nothing outside of hockey, and so I just kind of thought, like, I associated being bigger with not having friends, and so, well, the flip of that, or the solution to that, is don't be big. Yeah. So, and I would never encourage this as a motivating factor to anyone now, but it was my motivating factor.
I think that's important to address. You know, that happens here in life where what I should say is it happens here, especially in the age and era we're in, where a motivating factor can be good or bad, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really need to be labeled like that. It's a motivating factor. It was what it was. And there are people today that now, you know, that deal with those sorts of things and want to look different or feel different or be different, but then they're scared that if they express that then, you know, they get told that that's not what you're supposed to think.
Right.
And I get it. And this is a really big thing to unpack, where it's like, you shouldn't feel like that, right? Because it's like, we know that being a big kid, that wasn't why you didn't have friends necessarily.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? But what it was it became that self-fulfilling prophecy where it was just like you felt that way, so you started to live that way, and it started,
100%. And what happened between grades 9 and 10, I lost about 75 pounds.
Okay.
I got my first job landscaping. We went to the gym for 2-3 hours, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And we were out, I was out, you know, doing labor work 12 hours a day and plus the gym, right? So, you know, it's funny because as a trainer now, it's like we understand that all that cardio and all of that stress on the body is not the way to go. And yet that's exactly what I did. I bought the protein powder, bought the creatine, bought the pre-workout, and just went at it.
Yeah.
And, you know, made some diet changes. I'm like, I'm going to stop eating pizza. I'm going to stop eating rice. I went low carb. And, well, from what I understood to be low carb at the time. But, and it worked. And so then coming back grade 10, all of a sudden people are giving you the attention you've never gotten before. I leaned out about 100, it's funny, it's still about 190 pounds in grade 10.
Yeah.
Which is, there's not a lot of grade 10 kids that are 190 pounds now, right? But I was the smallest I'd ever been. So I was like, this is awesome. And it brought all of the things that I didn't have.
Yeah.
So it reinforced that belief that in order to be included, you have to be skinny, lean, or whatever.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
Looking back now, do you feel that that's what it was, or how do you feel about that situation now?
Well, I think as an adult now, I understand that that's probably not what it was to the degree that I felt it was then. Yeah. But I do think there's something to be said about the confidence that you're, you know, when you do lose weight or when you do get to that point that brings for you, and that's okay. But I think somewhere along the line in that process, believed, or at least put into practice, a belief that was not okay to associate those things, that associate, you know, being leaner and being skinny with friends.
Yeah.
I obviously now completely understand that that's not, but I believed that it was not okay to have confidence because you were leaner, because you accomplished the weight loss goal. And, you know, it's funny because I've fluctuated in weight up and down my entire life. That was the first major weight loss. And then post first year university, put on quite a bit of weight after shoulder surgery. And so then I got up to 340 pounds. And then got really, really sick because of medications that I was on. I lost another 80 pounds again. And then went back up to 320. I've done that multiple times. And I would say that, you know, I don't believe that the only reason people started connecting with me was because I lost weight. But I think it's taken me until maybe the last year of life to realize that was because I got confident.
Yeah, and I think that's
the positive.
Exactly, that confidence.
That, right?
Man.
Yeah.
And it's how that builds off of it. You got that confidence, you got that accomplishment, whether it's losing weight, gaining muscle, that accomplishment of doing something and physically changing your body and really fuel that confidence in the long run. And I think there are a lot of youth that still feel like that, right? Feel like I did as that kid on the baseball field and as you did that kid on the ice. right? That they feel like that now. What's the biggest thing that you would tell them right now? If you had one of them in front of you, what's your advice to them?
You know, it's funny you say that, because I would say one of the most rewarding parts of my job right now is when I get the big kids. When I get the big kids, and I'm like, yes.
Because so much strength potential, hey?
Well, not like that doesn't even excite me. I don't care. I got a 12-year-old trap bar deadlift 230 something the other day, and he's tiny.
Yeah.
And it was fun. But it's when the big guy walks in the room, at 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
My heart is just like, like, I want to help that guy, because I can see where, like, in all of his mannerisms and the way that he expresses himself, the way that he hides himself in his clothing, it's just like, dude, it gets better. Like, and you notice, because, like, I've got this one guy that he's always looking at me. He can never just focus on the exercise. He's always nervously kind of, I go, buddy, like, what's telling you have to be that scared right now? Well, he's insecure, he's big, and he's not like everybody else. And I know it sounds tacky and kind of cliche, but it's like, it gets better. And your superpower is how hard you work. Like your grit is what's going to carry you the farthest.
Yep.
And so, yes, the task ahead of you as a big guy when you're young, it's daunting, because you're not just dealing with the actual physical health task of, I need to get my health in order here. You're dealing with the social parts of growing up as a teenager, as a bigger kid, and how that differentiates you just from your own experience in life. And I think when I was kind of working on the notes for today, yesterday, I was like, I don't have any kind of crazy experience that drove me to be a trainer or gym owner. It was the level and degree of difficulty in the task ahead that motivated me the most. And so, if I was talking roundabout to your question, if I was talking to a kid, I would be like, fall in love with the level and degree of difficulty of the task ahead, and be so excited for the outcome that you just never stop. And that outcome might not be that you become skinny. So don't make that the motivation. Don't make that the driving force. But make the driving force that you have all this untapped potential to utilize strength, fitness, and sport to give you confidence that nothing else can really give you. Like and maybe that's just because I'm so, like, in the world of it all, that anything else that anybody else is passionate about, I kind of go like, well, it's not passionate to me. So, right, but I understand it in the lens of the gym. At how good it feels to hit a PR, to hit that weight loss goal, to, you name it, right? So that's what I would, in a roundabout way, that's what I would say to a kid. I'm like, you just fall in love with how hard the task is, because then you'll also set yourself up for a lot of success in the future.
So really fall in love with the journey. Right?
100%.
So not tying yourself to any specific process necessarily, but just being like, man, like, just be a better version of yourself each day, each time. Just grow.
And
just
get comfortable with how hard it is. Because, like, it's, for example, like, when I lost the weight the first time, yes, it brought me the social inclusion that I didn't have up until that point. But it also felt like it was something that, like, this can't be sustainable. This can't be, you know what I mean? Like, because what if the factor here is, if I put the weight back on, do I lose it? And of course that wasn't reinforced later on in life, but
but it's hard. It's hard when that's your experiences, and that's, and that's what has happened, and it does. It's like, we can't sugarcoat it. That's part of life. right? Sometimes there is negative reinforcement. It's not always positive reinforcement, which can be tough. It's like, at least with that, you were able to get past that and to realize there was more to it. And I think you undersell yourself a little bit. I know you said there's no big change, but I think the fact that it was like you had those struggles, and again, I'm not like, I know there are other people like that I can relate to your story in a lot of ways too. But I think that is important that you bring that to the table with these kids, right? That it's like that they are coming to you for athletics, for change, and that you can instill that, and that's a big thing, man. And I don't undersell yourself on that. Right? Like, I know you're working with a lot of youth out at Legacy and a lot of teams, and I think that's important, is having a coach that can relate to that. If I had that coach, if my baseball coach was more like that and had explained to me the processes that he was trying to instill in me, things would have been so much different for me. Right. But I didn't, as a kid, I didn't understand it. And again, it's that negative reinforcement that we just talked about, where to me it was like, well, but the other kids were making fun of me. If I could go back now and look at it, I'd be like, I could see what he was doing, and I would strive for that, and I'd fall in love with the discipline, how hard it is, the uncomfortableness of what it is, so that I would see that change.
Yeah, you have to. And I think I did an exercise with a group of kids this summer, and I don't do a lot of pull-up testing because most kids can't do pull-up, and you don't want to reinforce that negative experience. But
I remember those in high school, man.
Oh, I hated them, right? It's terrible. It's like I could never push-ups, let alone pull-ups. I couldn't do them. And so a couple of kids were asking, can we do pull-ups? And I said, we'll think about it if we have time at the end, right? And I said, okay, everybody is going to try. There's not a single, I don't care if you get half, I don't care if you get 1, I don't care if you get 20. And, because it clicked in my brain in that moment that for whatever reason in this industry, in this world, that exercise is, for most people, we can go back to an experience where when we had to try and do pull-ups, and then the embarrassment and the shame and I'm weak and never, and even if you're lean, like just because you're lean doesn't mean you're strong, right? And so I got them all together, and of course, a few of them were super, super nervous, and I was like, it's fine. And I really used that experience for them to be like, look, guys, this means nothing. It means nothing to you or your value or your worth. And yet, for whatever reason, this exercise is so tied to value and worth and success in the gym. One of the most common comments I get from adult clients is, just don't make me do pull-ups. I don't want to try. They're terrified. The moment you suggest even a dead hang or something like that, it's like, no trauma, right? Like to something in PE class or something in whatever.
Well, that back then they would compare, and you were told, well, an average male or female should be able to do this. And then if you couldn't do it, you felt right. And then of course it was the pecking order, because it was like, it didn't matter if you could beat the cooler kid, but because the cooler kid was lighter or whatever it was, it had the thing in it. And then the trauma is exactly it. You go back to those places where you felt ridiculed, you felt worthless, right?
And I really use that as, like, I say, guys, look, your experience here, and these are like 12 and 13-year-olds, I'm like, your experience here and everything you do, from how hard you work to, how well you encourage others, your positivity, all that kind of stuff, all of that has so much power and weight for not just your experience here, but how you go from here and how you act from here. And so I try and do little exercises like that with kids from time to time. I go, look, see, you're not better than you, because like it doesn't matter. Like, you did the absolute best you could do, and that's all anyone's should be asking of you. And from my end of things, from my perspective, sometimes it is my job to help kids get to the point where they can be comfortable and confident to try hard. Trying hard is something that's squandered for a lot of kids, and you can see the way they come in. It's like, it's kind of just a turtle, right? And it's like, no, trying hard doesn't need to be scary. And I think that's where my passion comes from, is everything I've dealt with as a kid, adult, up until this point, I look back and I go, I want to do my best to help these kids not go through. It's not that I don't want to. Everyone's going to go through challenge to refine them.
And we have to.
We have to. It's a necessary part of the process. It's not that I'm trying to protect people or kids from having negative experiences, but if they can approach life with confidence and grit that they learn because they trained at Legacy, then that's the biggest win. And the same goes for every adult that walks through the door. I train every adult client the same way. And that's only something that's kind of come in the last 6 months to a year that I've kind of connected the dots on, that from a mentality standpoint, adults need it just as much. And
they do.
So teaching that vigor and intensity, and it's not the kind of vigor and intensity that you look at on Instagram or whatever when you've got, I don't know, trying to think of like Larry Wheels doing a 800-pound bench press or whatever, and he's screaming, or Goggins or whatever, right? It's like, that's not what you need to channel from an outward expression. But honestly, from an inward expression, most of us aren't comfortable going there. But the results that you get from a fitness standpoint, from a journey standpoint, when you kind of channel that part of you that you maybe don't practice much from an intensity standpoint, your results just skyrocket in the gym, in life, and everything, right? Like and I don't know, like that's how I view motivation and the importance for it, is that you have to kind of find that little part of you that's just like, it makes you go nuts, and then try and foster that, because you will see results in every area of life if you approach. It's the Goggins mentality without
necessarily the
killing your body.
Circumstance
You know what
that
I mean?
goes with it.
You don't have to carry the boat, but you should want to try, right? And that's what I want the kids to get, is that just at least be comfortable with trying. And if you don't love it, you don't like it, it's fine. Go apply the same principle, the same approach.
I think that's something that a lot of times is lost in society now, is if we're not good at it, if it's not easy, then we leave it. If we're uncomfortable, if we don't like it, then don't do it. Do what you love, which is great. And I do think we should follow that. But at the same thing, it's like, the things that you don't like are often the things that maybe you should come at with that intensity that you're talking about, where it's like, you know what, I'm going to overcome this. I don't like squats, or I don't like pull-ups, or I don't like XYZ, I don't like public speaking. Like, we can extrapolate this out of fitness, right? Where that extends into the rest of life, where it's like a lot of times we stifle that intensity because it's like, well, no, right? Like, there's no need for this here. But I agree with you. I think we need to start to release that more sometimes in the right outlets. Because I think in society we see it pop out too often in the wrong areas, right? Where we see, and I'm not going to start digging into details on that, because we could really unpack that.
6-hour podcast.
I'm not ready to go into that. But like, we see it pop off in different areas of society that isn't channeled right. And I think there's something to be said that we shouldn't fear that. I'm going to sound cliche here, but that primal nature, that inner primal intensity that you called it, that we need to befriend it. We need to work with it. We need to channel it correctly. I think that's kind of where you were going with it too. Is that right?
Yeah. Because, and I think the reason I go there is because when people have asked me in the last six months to a year, like, so like, how's it going? Or like, what, why did you start this? Why did you want to do this or whatever? I don't have a whole lot of answers for them because I'm not there yet. I don't know. Like, I do and I don't, I know exactly why, but my biggest thing is that I want Legacy to be something that can be for everybody. Like, it's, and with our 2 locations, we have the luxury to be able to do group and spin and athletic training, open gym, strength training, weightlifting, whatever. Like, we can tap into all those pools, but when people ask me like, why do you, like, what motivates you? It's like the fact that this is probably going to be one of the hardest things I do in life. At least it has been so far. And
being a business owner, it's like, it's not exactly easy.
And so the motivation is so deep seated. It's hard to, it's hard to describe. But it's been something that exponentially grows with every week, with every month. It's like the motivation kind of is creating itself a little bit. And I honestly think that that's I hope that that's something that people can resonate with, is like, you got to be real comfortable with not knowing and not knowing everything and not knowing where it's going. You've got the vision that you don't tell anybody about. And that's so deep in the heart, but like, I don't share that with a lot of people, right? Like, it's very, because otherwise it becomes somebody else's, and you let it become somebody else's. That's the danger. It's not always the case, right? And so I think a big, for most of my life, my motivation was guided by somebody else. Anything I did was because somebody else told me to do it. And so that is one of the biggest factors with why Legacy exists. Is because it's mine, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's been such a journey to figure out. It's like, it's not anybody else's, and it's okay that it's mine. It's not selfish. It's not, you know what I mean? And but that a year ago, 2 years ago, would have been the most selfish thought I could have.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Well, now you're here, right?
Exactly.
And you've got Legacy. So tell me a little bit. You got 2 locations. Right? You've got one in Warman, one in Martinsville. And they're a little different though, right?
Quite.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about that.
So Martinsville, I bought back in December of last year, and that's like the group fitness facility. So we run group fitness classes, varying kinds. We've got kind of like a handful of different HIIT classes, spin, what else, right? A little bit of yoga and mobility classes. We've got a few instructors that kind of do their own thing, which I'm really passionate about. Like, I want a facility that is all about creative freedom, and that the instructor is capable but also creative too. You know, we're not sticking in the box of some specific way of doing things, right? Like, I think you're playing a long game with it, but eventually that's like that. My hope is that the creative freedom is what we're known for, right, in Martinsville. And then Warman. So Warman was already, or it was, I guess, last summer, not like summer 2023. It was in the works. We're working on the lease, getting all that paperwork. That took 5-6 months or so, which in reality, like, really quick. You know, like, it felt like forever, but it was.
It does.
Ridiculous. Like,
feel forever sometimes.
In 14 months or so, we've bought and opened a location, and May of last, like, summer 2023 was the first time that any of this was even a thought.
Right.
So it's not a lot of time, but Warman opened in April. We had to convert a 1 acre property with 2 buildings into a usable gym. So we converted the shop into the first area, and just, you know, put everything that you need in a gym: squat racks, and turf and sleds and cables and dumbbells, all that kind of stuff, and created the open gym and you know, format. And then throughout the summer, we built out the back, and so the back building's quite a bit bigger. It's about just under 5,000 square feet, 6,000 square feet, somewhere in that range. And that was the whole idea with the property, was that we were able to separate the athletic training from the open gym use, right? It's like, one of the biggest things is when you start throwing in big group stuff into a facility that other people are using, it just deters, right? People don't want to want to, especially adults, they don't want 20 teenagers walking in.
Yeah.
And and so that's why that property was so important to me. And so, yeah, we were at this point now, so Martinsville hasn't changed in terms of what's offered and the vision for that. We're trying to bring it into the fold of the vision of legacy, and that takes time, right? Like it was a business, a different business beforehand, and so you have to kind of go through the process of really sharing the vision little bits at a time until it's it's kind of meshed, right?
And that's that legacy.
And that's exactly right. The word just, it works, right? And so that, and Warman, we're kind of been in a soft open phase with the back building for the last couple of weeks, running lots of teams through it, just kind of making sure the format and the layout works. And I'm sure we'll change it a few times, but just making sure that everything kind of runs smoothly, and then it'll be fully operational for members.
Nice.
Hopefully the next kind of week or two.
Okay.
So awesome, man. That's kind of where we're at with that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, do you offer personal training and stuff out of your gym too?
Yeah. So we, Martinsville, the options there, for some trainers that do have their PT, but with class schedules, we can't interfere. So, Warman is our main personal training place. We operate with 1, 2, 3, 4, we're like 6 or 7 PTs there. About 9 instructors in Martinsville right now. And our PTs range from, it covers every base. Like if weight loss is your goal, we can set you up with somebody that's their, like that's who they want to work with. If strength training, powerlifting is your goal, we can work with that too, right? Like we cover every base rate with that, and have some good nutrition coach connections as well. And so our goal, like with our PT function and the way that we run it out of Legacy, is it's okay to have all of these different approaches. Yeah. Right. Because I
think it's important.
It's super important. And I don't want to be a place that's like, you have to do this way. And I mean, to a degree, there are things I don't want.
Yeah.
At my gym, 100%. Like, I don't want certain approaches at my gym, but that doesn't mean that if you're not, and this goes back to the intensity. This goes back to the like deep-seated intensity part, where just you got to find out what that means for you. Yeah. It might not be as intense for me. It might just look like, or for them, it might just look like just getting yourself to the gym and consistency. And that's the extent to which you push yourself, and you're okay with that. But you're doing something, right? Yeah. And so I think our PTs can kind of cover that.
Okay, man.
That basis,
awesome. Yeah. So if someone is looking to either get a membership or to come train with you or someone on your team, where do they reach you?
Website would be the best. Okay. The best spot right now. You can connect with us on social media, Legacy Fitness Athletics, or Legacy FA Martinsville. Okay. Either one of those works. That's the Martinsville Instagram and the Warman one, and then legacyfitness.sk@gmail.com. Okay. So that's all on the website though. All of our contact info is on the website. There's a little like info box somewhere on the website you can fill out. We always run a 14-day free trial. So anybody can come in and sign up and set themselves up with our booking system, which we're rolling out this week as a brand new system. So
awesome, man.
That'll be a
lot of new,
that'll be a challenge
for
sure.
On,
but yeah, we're there, and we're starting to roll out the new stuff. So
perfect. Yeah. So you heard it here, guys. If you're looking to find a new gym, you're out in Martinsville or Warman, or even you commute out there from Saskatoon, check them out. 14-day trial. They've got personal trainers. They've got awesome facilities. I was out there a couple weeks ago and toured it, and I'd love for you to check it out. So all the details will be in the notes below if you are looking to connect with Jared or Legacy Fitness. But once again, guys, keep it real and change your story.